I thought it would be kind of fun today to tell you guys stories about tipping, specifically tipping on stage. I've got a few of them. I've got quite a few of them, but I figured it'd be kind of fun. I was thinking about how there are a lot of guys who don't actually know how to tip girls on stage or don't feel comfortable tipping girls on stage. And so I thought I'd talk about that, how you tip, how much you tip, just all the general stuff. I know I'm gonna miss a lot because there's a lot you could say about tipping, but I'll cover the basics if I can. And hopefully also tell you guys a few amusing stories while I'm at it. So the first thing about tipping, most people know this, it's kind of something you take for granted, but every once in a while you get somebody who's either very ignorant or very rude, and they will throw a quarter at a girl while she's on stage. Don't ever do that. The standard is $1. Anything less than that is an insult. Most people, they figure that out, but I've had a few really, usually like young guys who are like really new to strip clubs who think they're being like edgy or something. They'll throw quarters at the girls, and it's happened to me, I think only twice in the 8 years that I was dancing. The first time I was a really, really young dancer and I did not know how to handle it. So he threw the quarter up on stage. I knew it was an insult, so I took it and I threw it back at him as hard as I could, and hopefully it stung a little. I got off stage at the end of my set, and this next girl comes up. Now, she was a much more experienced dancer. He threw the quarter at her, too. She picks up his beer. She dumped the entire thing out in his lap. She screamed at him, pointed to the door, and told him to get the fuck out. And so he and all of his friends kind of slowly get up and they sort of wander out of the club, which freed up all the seats at the front of the stage for people who were actually willing to pay. That particular club did not have bouncers, and so the dancers were kind of on their own. Other clubs that do have bouncers, I think that might have been handled a little differently. But as it was kind of it was a rough kind of bar. Anyway, um, the other funny thing that happens with coins a lot, and this is only kind of more up north, is Canadians will cross the border and they'll visit a strip club. And Canadian money, like they have $1 coin and they also have a $2 coin. And so it is not uncommon for an unsuspecting Canadian to place, like, I've seen guys do this, like $10 up on stage in, coins. And a girl will like get furious because she thinks it's like $2 in quarters, and she'll start like hurling them at the guy. And he has to like quickly let her know that it's Canadian money. As a general rule, if you can avoid it at all, do not place coins on the stage because it's really easy to break your ankle on a coin, either a quarter or a loonie or a toonie or anything like that. It's really easy to break your ankle on those things because those like 8-inch stilettos, 9-inch stilettos, like the moment that shoe hits the coin, it starts to slide, your leg goes in the other direction, and you will break your ankle. So ideally, no coins. I mean, ideally, no coins. I'm trying to think of a nice way to make, loonies and toonies work as tipping, but really, like the guy that I knew who did that, he was a really nice guy, and the dancer was a really nice dancer, and they got along really well, like later after she figured out that it was Canadian money. But like he was putting it in nice, neat little stacks, and she still like got, flipped out at him. Going to the opposite end of the spectrum, $100 bills. It happens. It happened to me a couple times, twice that I can think of. The first time it was a guy that I was talking to, and he was talking about buying like a really expensive dance, like I think either a half hour or an hour. I got up on stage. He came up to the stage and he started throwing money at me. And he threw, and I noticed it as he was throwing it. It's amazing how you can notice that as someone's throwing it, but you can't see what denomination a coin is. Like, I don't know how that works, but like really you notice the difference. He threw $100 bill, and then I think a second $100 bill. I can't remember how many it was, but I saw those and I just kind of got excited because it doubled my income for the night at that point. Like ideally, it was early enough in the night that it could double my income. Like later on in the night, it wouldn't necessarily work that way, but it was really exciting. It made a huge difference in my night's income. And so I saw that, I got really excited. I grabbed up all my money at the end of my stage set. I went off stage. I started rifling through the ones looking for this $100 bill that I saw. I found either one or two $100 bills. I was really excited about that. I was very happy. I walked out of the back room. I went to go sit with this guy. I was like, great, these $200 bills plus this, we call them VIP dances, anything half hour, anything really longer than just a single song dance is usually called a VIP. I was going to do this VIP dance with him. That was going to get me a lot of money. I was having a good night. I sat down, started talking to the guy, and he very sheepishly told me that he really had not intended to throw that money at me. I was like, okay. He thought it was ones. He reached from the wrong end of his wallet, whatever. And he asked for it back, which is, by the way, really tacky, but I get it. It was $100 bills. Like if it was a 5 or a 20 or, a 10 or something like that, it would be really, really tacky. $100 bills, you can kind of understand it a little bit. So I gave him back the money. I reached into my wallet. I pulled out it was either $1 or $200 bills. I gave them back to the guy. And I was like, there you go. I realized it was a mistake. It was an honest mistake. Here you go. He was like, he looked at them. He was like, there should be one more. And I was like, that's all I saw. And I can't remember if he asked me to double check it. I think he did ask me to double check it. And if he did, then I double checked it and I still didn't find it. And I was like, I'm sorry, this is all I've got. And, I was wondering if maybe one of the bouncers like pocketed it at the end of the set or anything like that, but I couldn't find it. And so I was like, well, this is all I've got. Here you go. Do you still want to do that dance, that half-hour dance or hour-long, whatever? He was like, no, I really don't want to now. And I could tell, like, he thought that I was, like, lying to him about the money or, whatever. I think he thought I was just being dishonest to him. But if I was going to go so far as to be dishonest, you would think I wouldn't have given him the rest of his money back. Anyway, I was a little disappointed because that was more money that I wasn't getting. I wasn't getting the money that I had gotten on stage, the hundreds. I wasn't getting this half-hour dance that I wanted. I was a little disappointed, but I kept dancing. The night went on. End of the night comes around, and I was counting through my money. And there were, in that club in particular, we ended up with a lot of newly minted bills. I guess there was a mint somewhere nearby, but we would have newly minted bills, just very, very fresh all the time on stage. Freshly minted bills are not like your regular average dollar bill. Your regular average dollar bill has crumpled and uncrumpled and folded and unfolded, and it's very soft and kind of crinkly. It doesn't sit perfectly flat, and it has a softer texture, almost like cloth. A newly minted dollar bill is kind of, it's like a slightly thicker version of paper. It's just, it sits perfectly stiff. It's kind of floppy if you wiggle it back and forth. It lies perfectly flat, and like paper, it tends to stick to other pieces of paper of a similar nature. So you can end up with a chunk of dollar bills that are all just completely stuck to each other, and pulling them apart is a challenge. There have been several times that I've been given money, like somebody will pay for a dance with newly minted dollar bills, like just, they'll hand me $25 and it will just be one floppy little, like, compact packet of money, and I have to slowly but surely like peel them away from each other so that I can tell just how many dollar bills I got handed, which is kind of difficult to do, especially my hands are very dry, which doesn't help, but they will stick to each other like nobody's business. So end of the night, I'm slowly peeling apart all these new dollar bills to figure out how much money I got, and there, stuck in between two newly minted $1 bills, was this $100 bill. And I saw it and I literally squealed right there in the changing room with like other girls getting ready all around me. I remember the changing room too. It was like bright pink. And so I'm standing in this bright pink changing room surrounded by mirrors and other dancers, and I'm holding this dollar bill in my hand like it's like the golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and going like, oh my God. I was so happy. By that point, the guy had left, so I wasn't returning it, and I got to keep that one. The other story about $1 bills was this club that I worked at that had a 3-foot law. And a 3-foot law is something that's imposed by the city that basically says no customers can come within 3 feet of the stage while the girl is performing on it. The rule's a little more complicated than that. The way it was written, the way the law was written was no other human being can come into a 3 foot area of the stage where the girl is performing, and the stage has to be a certain height above the ground. And the reason they make the laws this complex is because they, lawmakers and, people in cities typically do not like having strippers around. We're not, you know, good people. And so they make really complicated, difficult to follow laws that restrict our activities, as much as possible without being unreasonable, even though it seems pretty unreasonable. Basically, to make it difficult enough for us to be around that we just pack up and leave. My favorite was the 3/4 of an ass rule. You had to have underwear on that covered 3/4 of your butt. And I kept on thinking, like, every time I got reminded of this rule, like, not that people reminded me of the rule, like, hey, you need to be covering more of your butt. I ended up doing the smart, well, I thought it was the smart thing, but the safe thing. And I just covered my entire butt anytime that I wasn't, supposed to be showing off a little more. Because I mean, you could have like thongs under that. In fact, I should do like an entire video about girls who wear like multiple layers of underwear. But basically, like, with a little bit of job experience, you start wearing multiple layers of underwear because it gives you extra protection and just extra coverage, and it also gives you more to take off so you can tease people with it. But yeah, I knew girls who would wear like 3 or 4 pairs of underwear on stage just to kind of do multiple things. But I would cover my entire butt because, how are you supposed to know what 3/4 of a butt actually is? Like, I remember one time I had a pair of underwear that covered 3/4 of my butt, and I talked to the manager, and he said, yep, that's 3/4 of your butt. And I started dancing, and my underwear started riding up, and suddenly he's like, you can't wear those underwear. And I was like, well, I've been told multiple times that this underwear is okay. He's like, well, it rode up, so now you can't wear it. So then I had to get new underwear. It's like, it was nobody was willing to draw out a diagram of how much of a butt is 3/4. But I really, really think that lawmakers who make rules like that, like 3/4 of your ass should be covered, they need to provide a diagram. Like, they need to have an actual physical diagram demonstrating to the people who are, supposed to live under these laws, how much 3/4 of a butt actually is, which has nothing to do with tipping, but that's my rant on butt coverage. Anyway, the law was 3 feet away. And I've worked in clubs in that area that had that law, where they have this lovely little moat. So they've got a stage and a bunch of seats ringing the stage, and you can sit on the stage. You can even put your beer on this little like area on the stage. And then they have a 3-foot long moat, like a little area where it's kind of depressed, and it's away from the beers and everything. And then they have the stage itself, so people can sit down and they can tip the dancers, but they're not 3 feet, they're not within that 3-foot no-go zone. This club was not nearly so nice. It was a much smaller building, and I think that might have had something to do with it. They just didn't have room to build something like that. But all they had to prevent people from coming right up to the stage was bouncers who weren't usually paying much attention, and a line of tape on the floor. And so you're supposed to be dancing there, and you have to maintain a 3-foot distance from the customers. And people would regularly get drunk and just wander right past that little tape line on the floor and start tipping the dancers straight down the stage. My worst experience of that was when I was doing a handstand on stage, and a guy came up behind me where I couldn't see because I was doing a handstand, and tried to shove a dollar bill right down in between my legs. Thank God I was wearing underwear. And I fell down and I hurt myself actually pretty badly. I had to wear a brace on my knee for quite a while. Because, he was drunk and he wasn't paying attention and he didn't care, and the bouncers weren't paying attention, so nobody saw it happen. And so I was in pain for like weeks afterwards because, that line of tape, it doesn't do anything. It does not do a single bit of good. So anyway, on the particular night in question, I was on the stage and I was dancing around, and this extremely intoxicated man shambles like a zombie up to the stage and starts hurling $1 bills at me. And I'm looking at it, it's like, well, I need the money. I'm not going to tell him to leave. That's the bouncer's job. I'm going to scoot approximately 3 feet away from him, and I'm just going to keep dancing, because if they're not going to stop him and he's giving me money, I'm not particularly inclined to stop him either. And so I've scooted about 3 feet away. I'm waiting for the bouncers to finally like start paying attention and doing their jobs. And I've worked in clubs with great bouncers. That just wasn't one of them. And this guy is throwing $1 bills, just throwing them, throwing them. He's got the bleary eyes thing going on. He's just not paying attention to anything. And he's throwing money, throwing money. And all of a sudden I see a $100 bill hit the stage, and like, I freeze. Like I swear my heart skipped a beat. It was like, oh, there it is. And that $100 bill was rapidly followed by a second $100 bill. And then he reaches into his wallet, pulls out a third $100 bill. And at that point, I'm waiting. I'm just waiting for it to hit the stage, because I swear I was ready to like grab the money and start scooting it out of his reach. Like I didn't know what to do. Like this was just quite a lot of money that was hitting the stage very, very, very quickly. And all of a sudden he paused, and I kind of reached out my hand like, okay, give it to me. And he looks down at the bill, sees that it's a $100 bill, looks down at the stage, and dives onto the stage, like this full body dive. And this was not a petite man. Like he was everybody's taller than I am, but this was a very tall dude and a very heavy set dude. And so he belly flops on the stage and starts grabbing at my money and shuffling it all toward him so that he can pull his $100 bills out. At this point, the bouncers finally wake up. They run over, they drag him off the stage. I start scooting my money toward the back of the stage, because I don't know how many $100 bills are in this pile of money that I've got, but I want them. I think the guy got asked to leave after doing that. I don't know. I don't think I saw him again, but the money was mine, and I was happy about that. I have seen guys who are afraid to go up to the stage to tip girls, and this kind of makes some sense. I've gone up to the stage to tip girls because as a dancer, that's something we do. Like we do it to encourage other people to start tipping, but we also do it for guys who are either A, too lazy to get up to the stage and tip themselves, or B, too shy to get up to the stage and tip themselves. So, I mean, I've done it, and it feels a little awkward the first time. Like, you know that you're walking right up to the stage, and there are people all around you, and you know they can all see you. Nobody cares. I guarantee you, nobody cares. Nobody cares that it's you. All they're noticing right now is, number one, the dancer on the stage, and everything else is a blur that's going on in the background. And so if somebody goes up and tips the girl on stage, they'll be aware that somebody went up and tipped the girl on stage. They will have absolutely no idea who. Like, this is a perfect example of the guy in the gorilla suit. Like, you could totally have a dude in a gorilla suit walk up to the stage, tip the girl, turn around and walk away, and no one would have any idea that it ever happened. Like, they would be aware that the girl got a tip. Fun example of that, like, people are not very aware of things outside the stage, but sometimes they're not even aware of things on the stage. That time I mentioned that I was doing the handstand, and the guy like tried to shove a dollar bill in my crotch, and I injured my knee when I fell down. I wore this huge, ugly knee brace forever. It was like one of those knee braces that was like, it was the most heavy-duty knee brace I could find at the pharmacy because I got hurt. And so I was on stage this one night, and I had this gigantic, ugly knee brace. Like, it was one of the ones with the metal supports that like stick out and looks kind of almost bionic. I got up on stage and I did an entire set with that thing on stage. Absolutely no one noticed that I was wearing a knee brace. No one saw it. No one had any idea it was there. I got down off the stage after my set. I started talking to the customers, and there were, more than one person was surprised to discover that I had a knee brace on. It was like, didn't you see it on stage? They were like, no. I was like, it was right there. Folks in a strip club are not paying attention to who is tipping. So if you're nervous about people like noticing you tipping, there's no way people are going to notice you tipping in a strip club. They're not going to notice. The only thing they're going to be aware of is that somebody did tip, and that is actually really, really helpful to that girl. So it's helpful that you're giving her money. And I'll talk about how much money in just a minute, but it's really helpful to the girl if you're giving her money. It's very encouraging to her. It gives her a little happy boost of, okay, I'm not doing this for free, because dancers don't get paid to come into work. In fact, we have to pay the clubs most of the time in order to use their services as a club, because technically we're private contractors. And so if we don't get tipped on stage and if we don't sell dances, we leave that club having lost money, which I've seen a lot of girls do, and I've occasionally done myself at some clubs. So it's really good for you to tip her on stage. It really helps her out. It's the only money she's going to get that night. If you don't do it, she doesn't get paid. But also, people are really, I don't know, people just follow other people. I'm not going to say that we're sheep, but we're sheep. We follow other people's example all the time without even thinking about it. And so there have been many, many nights where I've seen nobody's tipping, nobody's tipping, nobody's tipping. One person gets up and tips, and everybody else just kind of automatically, almost robotically, gets up and follows suit. The biggest example of that I remember was there was this guy. He was sitting with a couple girls. One of them danced right in front of me. The other one danced right behind me. He was sitting with these girls. They seemed to be good friends. They were all pretty chummy. Girl number one gets up on stage. Nobody's tipping, nobody's tipping, nobody's tipping. This guy goes up, he throws a handful of money on the stage. You know, he made it rain, which, if you don't know what that means, it's when you take a bunch of money and you throw it up in the air and it all kind of starts slowly filtering and wafting down on the top of the girl. He did that. Suddenly, every other person in the club gets up, tips the girl a couple dollars, tips the girl a couple dollars. You know, everybody else does that, and then they filter back into their seats, and the girl leaves with like a huge pile of money. Then it was my turn. I got up on stage. Guy is busy talking with these girls he's sitting with. He's ignoring me. He's not terribly interested. No one tipped me anything the entire set. I spent the entire set dancing my butt off as hard as I could. I did not make any money at all for that time or that effort. Nothing. I get down off the stage. Girl number two comes up. She's one of the girls who's been talking with this guy. So she gets up there. Guy comes up, throws a handful of money. The moment he does that, everybody else in the club slowly kind of just gets up and they wander over and they give her a couple dollars. And she left with a big pile of money. And the only reason I didn't get money was because nobody was willing to be that first person to come up. Because I'm pretty sure if somebody else had just gotten up off their butt and given me $1, everybody else would have kind of gotten up and gone over and given me $1. People do that. Like, I've seen so many occasions where somebody finally comes up to the stage and gives $1, and then everybody else does it too. Like, it just kind of wakes them up from this stupor. Like, oh, hey, I'm supposed to tip. And then they tip. So if you're nervous about it, if you're holding back, like, oh, I really, really like this girl, I really like her dancing, just give her the $1. You will help her more than you can know. Just give her the $1. Speaking of dollars and giving dollars, how much should you give? And that's a tricky thing. If you only have $1, and I've known some guys who, like, they come to the strip club regularly, or they have like a schedule that they kind of come to the strip club on a regular basis at, especially if it's a really busy night and there's lots of other people who are there who are tipping, it's okay to just give $1 in a lot of clubs. I don't know about all clubs. There have been a few clubs where I worked at where I've been kind of disappointed to just get a single $1, but that was like clubs where there was generally a lot of money, and then there'd be a slow night and somebody would like give me $1 like it was the hugest gift on earth, and I'd be sitting there like with $1 on my stage like, okay, you're the only person who's watching me. I am literally busting my ass right now, and the best you can do is just a single $1. Okay, this is gonna be a long night. I've had those nights, and I try not to be frustrated about it, because I've had people that I've talked to who have explained to me, like, sometimes that's all they've got. And it's like, yes, I get that. But do not expect me to be doing heavy duty pole tricks and like very, very athletic pole tricks and then get excited over a single $1 for all that, because it is exhausting. It is very physically draining, and there's only so much of that you can do in a night. So, you know, if you're a guy in a strip club and, you know, there's not that many of you, or there's only one of you, and you want the girls to like throw out all the good pole tricks, give them more money and tell them you like pole tricks, and you'll see a lot more of the pole tricks. Because It's very draining. You kind of have to ration out your energy throughout the night, or you'll burn out too fast and you won't have any way to get money later on in the night when the money starts to get better. But as far as money goes, $1 bills, like a dollar is the bare minimum, no quarters, obviously. Um, you can do that, but it's generally better, in my experience, if you go a little bit higher than that, $2, $3, something that gives the impression that it's more than just a single dollar, really works much better. It really seems a lot more generous. It seems much less stingy. Um, it's not the bare minimum, and it gives the impression of abundance. Like when you're on stage and you're focused on dancing and you're focused on making eye contact with your customers and you're trying to do some sort of difficult pole trick, you don't necessarily have that much time and energy to look at the money that people are giving you. So if somebody hands you like $3 or something like that in a nice little pile, you can tell it's multiple bills. You can't really tell much more than that. You're not sitting around counting, okay, is that 4? Is that 3? Is that 5? You're just grateful that it's multiple bills and they gave you a couple dollars or a few dollars. So multiple bills is always a good thing. And bigger denominations are also a good thing. Fives are a very nice way to tip people. Fives work out really well. Tens are good if you want to, if you're feeling very generous. I've had people tip 20s on numerous occasions. So, I mean, that's not unheard of for people to like throw 20s on stage, especially if you're, I mean, let's see. For me, I was much more of an athletic dancer than a sexy dancer. I was never particularly sexy in strip clubs. A lot of guys told me that I seemed like the kind of person that they'd like to go out to a bar and have a beer with. I was not the kind of girl they wanted to take home and, fuck their brains out. I just wasn't that kind of girl. I was sweet and cute and not particularly sensual or sexy. But I did really nice pole tricks, and there were a lot of people who were impressed by my pole tricks, especially since I was also pairing that with contortions. And so there were a lot of people who would throw $20 bills on stage if I did something particularly athletic or unusual, which, I did things that were athletic and unusual enough that happened. So $20 bills do happen. Obviously, $100 bills happen as well, but that's usually by accident. Let's see. So that's mostly the denominations of money and how much you should give. More than one. Like 2 or 3 is a good number. Fives are always good. Fives are easy because it's just one bill. You can toss it up there, and the girls will kind of zero in on that and see that it's a different denomination. Let's see. If you don't want to go up to the stage, you can always ask a girl to go up to stage and give money to another dancer, which can actually be really fun depending on what club you're in. If you're in a club with a 3-foot rule, it's not going to be particularly exciting. If you're in a club without a 3-foot rule, it might actually be rather exciting to watch. If you do that, like if you're sitting with a girl and talking with her and you want her to tip the girl on stage, I don't know of any girl who really gets jealous with that because it means more money is moving through the club. It's always a good thing. But it helps to give her a dollar as well. Like, here's a dollar for you. Would you please go tip that girl? I've had guys who don't do that. They just hand me some money and say, go tip that girl. But it's always very much appreciated if you give me a dollar too, since I'm going and doing something for you. If you do not know how to tip a girl in a particular club, you can always sit around and just kind of watch how everybody else is doing it. There are a few different ways to tip girls on stage. I've spent a lot of time in clubs with 3-foot laws. Like that was where I finally ended my dancing career. And so there you kind of had to literally just take the money and ball it up and chuck it at the girl because you couldn't get within arm's distance of her. Some clubs consider that to be horribly rude. With us, like I remember there were a few customers who were like, oh, I can't throw the money at you. That's too rude. It's like, just give me the money, okay? I can't take it from your hand. I'm not allowed. It's not legal. You have to toss it. I knew some girls who would make it fun by taking like a Dixie cup and sticking it in between their legs and saying, try to hit the cup. I knew other girls who would do like the little football thing, like try to get it in here. And some people think that that's just remarkably rude and tacky. I always thought it was fun because it kind of made a game for the guys. It encouraged them to throw money, which is all I really cared about on stage. So if they weren't necessarily in for the pole tricks, I tried to present them with a target and say, let's see if you can hit this. Um, and that was always kind of fun. I've been hit in the face with flying dollar bills before, like wadded up, balled up flying dollar bills, and usually the guys are pretty embarrassed because they had been aiming for something else. Um, but that's been my experience with throwing money. Some places throwing money is rude. Depending, I've yet to really see that. Like I know some girls will get offended by it, but honestly, if you can't reach the stage because there's so many people around it, underhand throw, like just make sure that it gets up there. Um, but I mean, it's always a good idea. Like if you're not certain, or if you're not sure, or if you're just kind of feeling kind of doubtful about it, feel free to ask any of the dancers. They will be more than happy to demonstrate for you how to give money to other girls on stage. Um, or any of the staff members generally. Like the staff is usually pretty helpful about that too. Um, I know that in a lot of clubs, like I haven't worked in one of those clubs in so long, but people will put money in their mouths and try to get girls to like grab it with their boobs. Like, excuse me, they'll like take take their chest and kind of grab everything and sort of squeeze it all together and use that as a way to pick up the money out of people's mouths. Um, that I've done it before. I've had some interesting experiences with it. I remember there was one club I worked at. It was New Orleans. It was New Orleans. New Orleans was interesting, but there was this woman who kept on putting the dollar bill in her mouth, and then every time I went to grab it, she would try to like suck on my nipple, which was the most disgusting thing. And so finally, after she tried doing this like two or three times, two times. After she tried doing it two times, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I've made it pretty clear I don't want you doing that, and you keep trying to do that, and I think it's very gross. And so you can stay on that end of the stage, and I'll dance all the way over here, even if there are no customers. I'll dance for myself before I let you do that again. So generally try not to like mouth somebody when they're taking your money. The other thing I saw, it was the first club I ever worked at. There was this guy who had taken like his nephew into the club for his 21st birthday and given him his first drink, and then his second drink, and his third drink, and his fourth drink, and his fifth drink. And so by the time I was on stage in front of this poor guy, he was like a zombie. Like he was completely like barely conscious. His eyes were kind of barely focused. They were sort of rolled up in the back of his head. He was nodding and kind of weaving this way and that. And he's sitting on the stage, like not, he's sitting at the stage, not on the stage, just kind of slowly drifting back and forth. It was like somebody should have cut this guy off a long time ago. I do not know how on earth his uncle got away with feeding him more drinks, but I was a little worried. Like he was the kind of guy who looked like he was about ready to head to the ER for alcohol poisoning. Like, is he going to survive the night kind of guy? He had a dollar bill in his mouth. I went to take it. It was soaked through with drool because he was completely like zonked. And it was disgusting. It was like there's a certain limit to how much I actually want the money, and this far exceeded the limits. I am not doing that for $1. No, thank you, sir. I thought his uncle was kind of a monster, really. But that was my hometown. It's like, oh yeah, for your 21st birthday, let's, try and give you alcohol poisoning. Why not? Um, but yeah, that is a thing in some places, but in other places it's illegal. So again, you can either watch the people around you and kind of get a feel for if that's a thing that people do. And if you see the dancer doing it with like 5 people in front of you, then you know that that's what she's probably going to do. If you don't want the dancer to like stick her boobs in your face for whatever reason, you can just put the money politely on the edge of the stage and scoot away. But anyway, I think that's most of the stories I can get off the top of my head for now. If you are watching me on BitChute, I apologize. I was talking about maybe posting a video every day and then life happened at me. As a typical rule, I can't do more than 1 video a week, and that's on Thursdays. I've been trying to post up all my backlog from YouTube, and I just don't get alone in a room with a computer often enough. So it's coming. I'm trying for every day, but don't expect too much there because it's probably not going to happen. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys later.